Bartholomew or Carib Marcel, depending on where you know me from. And on Tuesdays, I like to interview heroes, and this person is no exception. Today is National Trans Awareness Day, and my guest is a very outspoken person against um, gender affirming care and, quite frankly, the mutilization of children. So I'm obviously not going to hide what I think of those terms today. So Beth is extremely brave. She's out of California, and I think we'll just jump into the conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Beth.
Thank you, Carrie. It's great to be here. Yeah.
So this morning already you were already at an event. What was that like?
So, yeah, this is like, I guess, the opposite of Christmas Day for me, right? This is a Transgender Day of Visibility, and it's become a holiday that some of the school districts are celebrating in our local cities and counties. And I heard that Elk Grove Unified School District, which is about a half hour from where I am in Davis, California, in between San Francisco and Sacramento, that they were going to have the mayor of Elk Grove give a state of the city address, and then also use it as an opportunity to celebrate the Transgender Day of Visibility. And so I thought I would go down there, and I brought my signs, and I brought the books, and I brought the breast binders, and I brought all the evidence I could gather that I've been collecting over the last few years. And I just did sort of like a one-person protest inside this civic community room. And then I did have a chance 3 minutes to speak during the public comment. And it was great because, they were sort of as a central focus, a woman who was a psychologist who calls herself a trans man. And so they brought on stage this woman who had, lost her hair. She was bald with facial hair and a mastectomy as the example of the trans man. And I just had to call it out and just say, no, that's still a woman who's been harmed by, surgeries and drugs. And so that's what I did. And, I could do it partly because there was maybe a dozen police officers, in full uniform there. So I felt safe doing it. But in general, I have to be pretty careful when I do any kind of protesting by myself.
Well, and I mean, you look like a petite woman, so that's a lot to put up with, especially when we know there's violence. I don't know if you just saw the a politician, I think the Prime Minister of Canada, was saying that to misgender someone could cause harm or murder. It used to be, right, could cause genocide, or it could cause them to
Right.
self-harm. But now they're openly saying that misgendering could result in murder. So
I believe it. I've heard all kinds of things like that.
It's obvious that it's
somebody said last week. Yeah.
What we're gonna say? Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was at last week at another public meeting on it was community safety, and the police were hosting the event. But a man in the crowd called me out and said that I'm speaking out on this, on transgender ideology. He said it was causing he used the word lynching, the lynching of people in Davis. So I'm not sure if I'm really causing anyone to be any kind of lynching, but
Right.
that's the terms they use: lynching, genocide of trans people. Right. And it sounds like Prime Minister Trudeau said, the murdering of people by misgendering them.
Right. Well, and it wouldn't have been the Prime Minister, because it was a non-binary female in Canada.
I know who you're referring to. Yes. Yeah, I did see that.
So, what got you involved? I mean, have you always been this like going down in a blaze of glory parent who's just
I know. I think half the town or more thinks I'm, the crazy woman in town. And then there's a good percent of people who think I'm just speaking courageously about what I've seen happen in our town. But I got involved in 2018 when my daughter first started identifying as transgender, along with many of her friends. Within her, she's very, gifted and creative, intellectual. But then also,
What they would call
many of these girls
neurodivergent,
also, yeah, I
right?
can't say that
Mm,
for sure, but she was
okay.
or is a National Merit Scholar in perfect math
Uh-huh.
SAT. So she has a photographic memory and was reading, 3 or 4 years ahead of her grade level, as well as her friends who were also trans identified, right? These are very bright girls. And, one of the girls in her seventh grade honors class had come out as a trans boy over sixth grade, between sixth and seventh grade. And so many of the girls in her friend group, theater and choir, and in these honors classes, were all taking on trans identities around the same time. And girls like to emulate each other. And I was a kid of the 80s, so we had a lot of anorexia and bulimia at my high
Right.
school, and especially at my college, in the running crowd. So
Right.
yeah, you influence each other. And so when I saw that with my daughter, I immediately knew that something wasn't right. And I should have, I mean, I could not find a lot of resources because this was 7 years ago. But I did get a hold of some really good information from Jesse Singal in the Atlantic, and then one other endocrinologist on the East Coast, alone. And I was able to work with my daughter's psychiatrist to, to delay any kind of medicalization. And then she sort of desisted from her trans identity, which, girls will do that if you give them a chance to mature. And it might take 3 to 5 years. But during that time, I started to become an activist, and I'm the accidental activist, right? I had no plans to ever be somebody who showed up at city council meetings and school board meetings, or protesting in front of different medical conferences. But I just knew that from talking to Kaiser Permanente pediatricians and endocrinologists, that this was a medical scandal. And then I also sat in my younger child's health class, and I saw them teach the gender unit. And so I knew they were teaching 13 gender identities, and that that there was a difference between what your brain thought about your gender versus your genitalia and your body parts, and that's match which any sense, because you can't have a girl brain or a boy brain. But that's what they teach the kids. It's called the
At what age?
gender bread person.
At, at what age?
They start teaching that in fifth grade. Is when they start bringing in the curriculum. But I have these library books. Anyways, I've got a dozen of these books, but these are the books that they have in kindergarten and first grade, in the Davis schools or California schools that talk about trans kids. And so kindergarten teacher is going to start with 5 or 6 year olds, kind of introducing this idea. And there's flags in the classroom and in the elementary school at every grade. And we do in California, we have tampons in the boys' bathroom. For any school that's third grade and up, it's required by the state. And so here at Davis, that's at every elementary school. So the bathroom that the boys use in kindergarten, first grade, they have tampons. That's or sanitary napkins.
Right. Which they'll
Yeah,
how? No one, even early maturing girls, kindergarten and first grade, that's not a thing. So
yeah,
the earliest like prematuring girls that I've seen have been 8 when they start to have breasts
yeah.
developing early, right? Um,
Right.
but
Yeah,
kindergarten and first grade, all they normally know is that the opposite gender is gross. That's kind of
yeah.
where they are at
Right.
that.
Hmm.
Okay,
But now they're
so
being
so
told that you might actually be the opposite gender, right? So
right, right.
yeah.
Okay, so you said you learned this from Kaiser Permanente. Were they admitting it, or did you just how did you how did you find the resources to back you up? I know that when I first started saying, "I'm not going to do that," And that's all I said. Like, I'm not a person who gets up and screams and yells. I just say, yeah, we're not going to do that. That's the Emperor's New Clothes. We aren't playing that game. And that was enough in my community to have people say I'm a harmful person who causes harm.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, wait a second. I'm harmful for telling the absolute biological truth and just saying I'm not going to
Right.
participate. I've not even said you
Right.
can't participate. I've just said
Right.
I'm not going to, and I'm going to give a
Yeah.
voice to all the people who feel that they don't need to. That's it.
Yeah.
So, do you do this alone? Your lighting is
Um,
a little bit, I don't know if you've got more light, but it's
well,
very dark. But it is
oh
what it is.
shoot.
It's okay.
Oh, here, let me try this.
Okay.
Does
There you
that?
go. Much better. Yeah.
Oh,
So, okay.
is that better?
Yes. So tell me.
Okay. So good
Okay.
question though. How did I know that Kaiser Permanente?
Yes.
That's a good question. So
Yes.
my daughter was just 13 years old. We were at a wellness visit. She's experiencing some dizziness, and we were in the wellness visit, and my ex-husband, he was in the room as well because we were divorced parents, and we would both go to my daughter's and my son's doctor visits. And so we were both in the room. He started using he, him pronouns and this new name my daughter wanted to be called. And the pediatrician's face just lit up. She was so excited about this. And she said directly to my daughter, "Oh, I hear your father using, pronouns. Can I, what name would you like to have in your records? Or can I mark down that you have these new pronouns?" And then, my daughter answered. And then the pediatrician said, "Well, I just want you to know that Kaiser Permanente has a gender clinic called the Proud Clinic in Oakland. And it's a one-stop shop." That was the word she used, where you can talk to an endocrinologist, a gender specialist, a social worker, and an OBGYN. And so my daughter got excited, and we left. And then the next day I called the pediatrician and I said, I'm livid. I said, we were there for a dizziness situation. We were not there to talk about gender affirming care or whatever this is. How could you have introduced that idea to my daughter without first checking with? And she said, she had some like answer like, "Oh, we know it's life saving. We know it helps with suicide ideation. It's safe. It's." And so I asked her, well, who would prescribe puberty blockers and hormones to my daughter? And she said it would be the endocrinologist and the endocrinologist. I spoke to them, and he admitted, and I have it in an email which I've shared with the Federal Trade Commission. He said, this is WPATH standards and the Endocrinology Society, and that he said, we know it reduces suicide ideation. And I said, well, what are the long-term studies? If I put my daughter on these drugs, what are the long-term studies of where she'll be 20, 30 years from now? And he said, well, we don't know because it's emerging science. That was the word he used. It's an emerging science. And I said, well, then my daughter would be the guinea pig, right? because you don't know, the safety of this. And so
Right.
that just really woke me up. It shook me. It shook me to the core that my child would be the one to be experimented on. And so I got, in some ways, very lucky. We allowed the social transition, but not any medicalizing until she was 18. And she grew out of it, around her senior year.
Have you done
So I've been sharing those records.
no. So
Oh, go ahead.
have you spoken to Christine Seafin on critical therapy antidote? Have you done that podcast?
No, I don't think so. No, I should
Okay.
maybe
Yeah,
do that.
I will definitely
That'd
connect you
be
with them.
amazing. Yeah.
Because they do a
I
lot
did do this
on this
undercover.
subject.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I did
no,
this
go ahead. You did this
undercover story
undercover?
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that was 2.5 years ago. And it did get a lot of attention. Maybe, I don't know, seven, eight hundred
Yeah.
thousand views. People, so people saw it. It didn't make mainstream media, which is always unfortunate because it's just covered by, um, you know, more conservative news outlets. But I did do some podcasts about the story, and I think it's been really helpful. They've actually used it for Chloe Cole's lawsuit. It's, my declaration is in there with all of my evidence from the undercover story. But I was
Yeah.
approved for top surgery and a total hysterectomy, gender affirming hysterectomy, and phalloplasty all over Zoom in just a few months. So I know it's a medical scandal. Yeah, I said I'm non-binary, and they said, "Well, what can we give you? Here's our whole list of all the gender affirming procedures,"
Wow.
and they were trying to upsell me, like, you don't
Right.
you don't need just top surgery. What about bottom surgery? What about body
Wow.
contouring? And you know, yeah.
So
So
tell me about this. I mean, we have so many people who are going through this, and are they paying for it? Are 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 the
I didn't know this at the
families know?
time.
Yeah.
So Kaiser, I didn't realize this, but like 80% of gender affirming care, I think is the number. 80% is being covered by Medi-Cal, or it's like Medicaid for California. So for people
Right.
that are low income that are getting government assistance, and then that government assistance is paying for all these procedures. So it was only $100 copay for top surgery because it's outpatient, and it was $200 copay for the hysterectomy and the phalloplasty. And the surgeons charge, or they make 25,000 on a top surgery and about 135,000 on a phalloplasty. So it doesn't look like much for the patient, but all of the members or all of the taxpayers are kind of footing the bill. So
Right.
yeah, it's and I was over 18, but I still made the point that it didn't matter if I told them that I had an eating disorder, that I had mental illness in my family, that I was a survivor of sexual assault. Like that was just swept under the rug. And it's like, well, that's in the past. Now you're non-binary, and these are the things you want. So we want to help you. So, and
Help
my
you.
daughter was 17 when I started doing the undercover story, and I just was hoping that I could make a difference before she turned 18. Yeah.
So what was your daughter's progression? Because you said that um she desisted. She got to a point where that was not she did not
Yeah.
want to do. How did that happen? Did you guys have, and if you don't feel comfortable telling me, it's perfectly fine. But did you have battles? It sounds like your husband was on board with it, or your ex-husband was on board with it.
Hmm.
Did you have
And the
battles within
stepmom.
the
Yeah.
yeah. So did the
Hmm.
stepmom, 'cause
Yeah.
I'll just be honest, it seems like it's the awfuls who are pushing this, the affluent white liberal women, right?
Yeah.
Um,
She's younger too. And so I think that might be why it was easy for her to believe it. And I was a white liberal educated woman. And I not until COVID lockdown and this trans stuff did I wake up. So, I voted Democrat every year of my life until 2021, and now I just vote red. but I can
well,
see how
those are my
how
favorite stories. It's
yeah,
my favorite stories when
yeah.
people wake up. However, I do like I live in Utah, and we have the gender affirming care for therapy. So I'm interested to find out. That's the reel I was making before I jumped on, because I'm interested to
Um,
find out if that's going to change. Now, remember, Utah is supposedly a red state. We have tons of elected officials who put an
elected
R
official.
next to their name,
Yeah.
but they're also, you know, we're also a gender affirming state. Just my point being,
Mhm.
like, I'm glad to see people waking up from what I do call the Democratic plantation, but it doesn't mean that just because someone has a R next to their name that they're honest, or that they share
No,
common sense. Just common
right.
sense. Like, you can tell a child, especially if you're starting them as early as kindergarten with these books, whatever you tell them, they're going to believe. I'll just give you an
Right.
example. I told my students the first week of school, I'm like, I want to get to know you. And my intention was to show them how easy an adult can manipulate kids. That was, I teach in the homeschool world and I can, right? And so I told them that I was driving to school. And as I was driving to school, I saw a place that said free puppies. And so the kids go, "Oh, how cute." And I said, so I stopped in to see the puppies. And I said, then I saw that the puppies who weren't getting adopted happened to be puppies that kind of look like those, like a Holstein cow. They were the ones with like black with polka dots, right? Dalmatian, basically. And then so I said, maybe if you draw a poster about a puppy, and I just wanted to show them how fast, because they were supposed to draw a picture about their own life. How fast could I get them to change their mind? And then I started making ridiculous things like, well, the puppy had one blue eye and one brown eye. So making them change that. And then I was like, and now the saddest thing is that there were three puppies that only had one leg. And watching the kids change the poster based on how easy it is as an adult to manipulate them. And then I just told them everybody has an agenda because it's important. Sadly, it's important that our young kids know this, right? So I said,
Right.
everybody has an agenda. My agenda is to help you want to be lifelong learners.
Hmm.
But if I wanted to play that game in the creepy way, it would have been very possible to do.
Hmm.
And I know that that may sound like, where in the world did she go with this? But where I went with this is
No.
those books.
Yeah.
Hold them up again. I mean, these books are for little kids.
Yeah. Yeah. The other
You
one.
guys, ask that in our little tiny rural libraries. These exact books are
Yeah.
sitting in our libraries right now. And when parents say, "Hey, could we just get like a rainbow sticker put on them, something that lets us know what we're getting?" The librarians in our little tiny rural towns say no. They say no because their focus is on being, quote, "safe and welcoming" or inclusive. And what that really means is introducing your kids to LGBTQIA, which honestly has nothing to do with caring about whether they are gay kids, same-sex attracted kids. So here's a book. What's going on in that book?
Oh, yeah. So
What's
this is just an example that I got. This is a book from our public school, but it's also, sorry, public library. It's also in the schools.
Yeah,
It's called If You're a Kid Named Gavin. It's like based on a true story, but it's just a girl who's overweight and likes her cats, likes arts and crafts, but she's not allowed to use the boys' bathroom at school. And she becomes a trans activist and just talks about how she was able to go to meetings and convince everybody that she's trans, and so now she works with the ACLU, as an activist. So this is just like one example of a girl who's awkward and finds out she's a trans boy and then becomes an activist. But here's another one. This one's called Jacob's Room to Choose. This is a very common banned book, but this is also available in Davis schools. And what's even more insidious is it talks about a little boy who, the girls aren't comfortable with him in the bathroom and they speak out. And the teacher says that's not right. Of course, the girls should let you use the boys' bathroom. I'm sorry. Of course, the girl should let Jacob use, the girls' bathroom. And so not only does she tell all the kids that, you need to let Jacob choose which bathroom to choose to use, but then she also, again, they become activists, right? They show the little kids making
right.
posters that say, I have to pee, so let me be. Bathrooms are for everyone. Leave kids alone. And so it's kind of celebrating, children becoming activists. Girls giving up their rights to spaces that don't have males in them. Otherwise, they're not considered kind and inclusive. So yeah, they're making little activists out of kids, and then I have a couple more books. But again, these are books where boys who like wearing dresses, and they find out they must be trans girls. So of course, it's hurting effeminate boys to be told that you're in the wrong body and you're actually a girl. So I'm, this is a lot of homophobia and, um, telling kids that based on their interests, they could be in the wrong body. So none of this LGBTQIA plus stuff should be in our public schools. You don't need it for one thing. You can focus on academics, and it's super confusing when you start bringing in all this, this terminology and these different situations, and yeah. So I do library books and the school books just so I have them, and the curriculum. I've done public records requests so I can actually show everyone, this is the curriculum. This is my child's textbook for biology, and AP biology was changed 3 years ago to say that, scientists don't know anymore if maybe there are more than two sexes, and there might be transgender people. I mean, it actually says that in a biology textbook.
Right.
So,
Right. And
yeah.
what happens to the
Emerging
kids
science.
in your opinion? Right. What happens to the kids in your opinions when they're sitting there reading something that they believe strongly to be not true?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yes. So, I don't think there's that many kids in my town who are that strong, or have parents who instilled in them this critical thinking, or suspicion, like what you're talking about here, that teachers have agendas, and teachers unions have agendas, and so I'm sure for the we're so blue, so democratic in this town that that we don't have a Club America, TPUSA club.
right.
I'm not sure. I just can't imagine a kid being strong enough to say anything at school. I have kids say things to me all the time, thanking me. If I'm speaking in front of a school, they'll come over and whisper and thank me, or I've gotten text messages and direct messages where people thank me. But they've been told if they even question it or speak out, they might be suspended from school. It's considered hate speech. It's not inclusive. Athletes on girls' teams are told that you must allow the trans girl to compete and use your bathroom or locker room. Otherwise, there's consequences. And so that's why, here in California, we have all these, trans athletes competing in girls' sports, but the only places where they're really speaking out are down in Chino Valley, Riverside County, where there's these very strong churches down there, and then also on the Central Coast, where again, there's a large enough, I think, population of Christian or conservative kids that together they can speak out, and they're doing an amazing job. But you shouldn't have to have your whole church supporting you. You shouldn't even have to do this because of your faith. You should just be able to say, I'm a girl and I don't want a boy in my space, or I don't want my sports to be dangerous. But yeah, we're in a real bind here in California. So, but there's some good news yesterday with the U.S. Supreme Court, and last week with the Olympic Committee. So every day there's great news.
I am I'm hopeful that these things will stay after the midterms, because I can completely see people who don't believe. It's amusing to me that people are regularly quoting the Constitution right now and saying this is about this, when it's like, you know, 2 years ago you didn't believe in any of this, right? Like you thought you thought the Constitution was toilet paper, but now you're using the right terms to get people to align with you. Um, all I see is a social experiment. I see the breaking of the minds, the breaking of the will of people to even
Mhm.
stand up. Um, and it's hard to watch it. But I wanted to go um into what you've had to face for simply standing up. I mean, you don't go and like beat people up, or I mean, you might go and cancel people. I don't care if you do. But I want to know what you do. What is it that you do, and what is the pushback that you get?
Yeah, so well, there's been lots of pushback. First, they're going to come after your friends, they're going to come after your family, they're going to come after your neighbors, they're going to come after your job, and they're going to come after your livelihood. And they've definitely done that to me, right? So the first thing I lost was all my liberal mom friends in Davis. You know, a little bit hard at first, but then you realize, wow, I don't have to censor myself, or not speak what I really think coffee, or when I'm at a wine night or doing something with friends, because whenever I brought up this situation with my daughter, or with women being raped by incarcerated men in the prisons, or any issue, Leah Thomas dominating and swimming,
Yeah.
even though he's William Thomas. Anyways, they would just dismiss me, and they would just make me feel like that I was too focused on this topic. So I lost my friend, easy. And then there was some estrangement with my daughter, but not for many years. So that's really fortunate. I got to stay real close to her until she was 17. And then, there was like that no contact moment that I kind of expected that might be coming as an activist. And I understand, of course you want to align with your friends, and nobody wants to have an activist parent. So I feel terrible. Okay. And then the last thing, was my job. And so I was put on 8 months of paid investigatory leave from my job. And you know what was the straw that broke the camel's back was actually me speaking out on the drag queens at my hotel lobby in Hawaii. And it went very viral, a couple million views, where I'm like confronting these drag queens. And I was really talking about the medical scandal, because, my son had learned that cross dressing was very normal, heterosexual boys, and that, cross dressing and drag queens are just, a healthy, wholesome way to like explore. And then trans women are just women that were born as, they were assigned male at birth, but over time they realized they were trans women. So to me, they all kind of went together as part of the curriculum. And so I spoke out, and they, these drag queens did a video of me as well. So it went viral kind of on both sides. But our chancellor, the UC Davis, University of California, Davis, they wrote a statement condemning my behavior, saying that it was not inclusive, it didn't represent the university. And here I was on vacation, right? Free speech, this is
Wow.
America. I'm just sharing my views, and they used it to cancel me, or defame me at my job. And I was off for 8 months, and when I came back, every office, in our research unit at the university had flags up, the Progress Pride flag. So the directors, the lead researchers, it was like I came back into this war zone, and everyone's, against me. And I lasted another 4 months, but yeah, there was a petition to have me fired that was by 7,000. I don't know if they're movements, but it was like a student petition to get Beth Borne. And they weren't able to fire me for work conduct, or doing anything wrong. So but they did find a way to say that the budget change, President Trump's administration took away some funding for transportation at the university, and they said that's why I'm going to be laid off 4 months after I came back. And I'm working with attorneys, because I don't believe I was fairly laid off. I had 11 years
Right.
seniority and perfect performance reviews. So I've had a lot more time since then to speak out. And I do get, of course, everyone knows this who speaks out. You get death threats, right? You get, direct messages. I sometimes get threats in the postal mail, phone calls,
Oh,
and
wow.
my tires have been slashed twice, and I've been assaulted, my phone stolen. I was hit on the back of the head at a Turning Point USA event on campus almost a year ago. This Friday, April 3rd, it'll be 1 year ago. So I've been going to the court hearings, so I can see, the suspect, and then they keep kind of pushing back the actual hearing, but it is in the court now, and I do show up as and yeah, my signs get stolen. I don't know. There's just lots of ways that they come after you. So I take lots of precautions to keep myself safe. And yeah, I have a boyfriend I've had for 8 years, and he really does also everything he can to keep me safe. So
Good. He's at the
yeah,
gym on a regular basis, I hope.
exactly. I know people
I
are like,
mean,
"What do you do?" I think Sacramento Bee's like, "Give me all the details. What have you done to keep yourself safe?" And I'm like, I know where they're going with that kind of questioning, and I just say, "Well, I'm not going to share all the details, but you can
right,
imagine."
right,
So
exactly.
yeah, you're right.
I mean, and we will get into that, but somebody just wrote, "What a nightmare," and I just wanna hit yes, exactly. It is very much a nightmare. However, worse of a nightmare, at least this is the way I feel, and I'd love to hear how you feel about this, but worse of a nightmare is the idea that multiple generations will adopt this. I'll use the term kindness, and I used it the other day because, it was no kings, and people had put guillotines up around, around the Salt Lake Temple, actually, and so people had put guillotines up, and this is supposedly the kindest state. Um, how afraid are you?
Oh, I I couldn't live with myself without speaking out, and so I have my integrity, which is worth a lot. And I would be equally afraid if I wasn't speaking out, because see these girls with their, you know, they've lost their breasts. I've seen a couple girls still in surgical tape, on the university campus. Um, so that's just as scary to me, is to be somebody who's staying silent not not speaking out. Uh,
Yeah,
so I just try to focus on staying busy and doing everything I can, and knowing that I do it from a place of and caring for these people, and these trans identified people, especially the young ones. They're the sweetest, quirkiest, fun kids around. I want to see all of them safe. I'm not. I have
right,
you know even the college kids, even the kid who hit me, who of course, a trans identified man, uh, who's calling himself a woman. When I'm in the courtroom, I still have nothing but compassion for this young man. Even if he did hit me, he's been told that I am hateful or bigoted or transphobic. All my signs said on the university campus was, "Why so many girls having double mastectomies?" I mean, that's not hateful. That's a question. So
yeah. So,
yeah.
you said that you said you were with Turning Point, or that you had gone to a Turning Point. Did you work with them? Did you specifically work with them?
You I did get to know some of the Davis students at the university who were doing. They were the Davis College Republicans. They hosted Riley Gaines a year and a half ago, or maybe it was 2.5 years ago now. And so I got to meet Riley and be really a part of that event, and it was awesome. But my friend from the Bay Area, they turned around when they saw, that I was like 85 full masked and riot gear, police officers from around the region, private security guards, and then they saw trans Tifa, like, I don't know, 50 guys in masks and coming at us, and so they got freaked out. They left. They vandalized the school. Um, yeah, I mean, Riley Gaines is what, 5'2" and 110 pounds. And so they couldn't handle having a woman talk about, her right to sports and
About
spaces free of
fairness.
men.
Just call it that,
Yeah, about
fairness.
fairness, exactly.
Yeah.
Fairness and dignity, privacy. But Oh, okay. So Turning Point USA, though, I did see, the reason why I went to their event was I saw they had a table as I was walking through the university, and I grabbed their flyer, and they said they were going to have the officer, Tatum, Brandon Tatum. He's a
Mhm,
retired
mhm.
police officer from Arizona,
Right.
Black conservative, um, Christian, or just a wonderful guy. And he came to the university, and he just wanted to have one of these prove me wrong events, like Charlie Kirk would do. And, they went again crazy, just like they did with Riley Gaines. They came onto the campus fully masked, about 30 of them, and they ripped up their booth. I mean, this is before I arrived. So this was nothing to do with me, because I was still, parking my car. And they pulled the hat, MAGA, Make America Great hat off of a friend of mine. Um, they grabbed the hat. They destroyed, all of their flyers and literature. And then they retreated. And then they came 15 minutes later, and the police just stood down. And the officer Tatum, he's like, "What are you guys doing? You're the police. You're supposed to be protecting, this woman." He said that this woman just got hit, and yet you're still not doing anything. So the police, let them
Yeah.
take my signs, let them hit me. Um, and that's a real problem. We've basically told our police officers, we have this cops off campus group. Well, you see it with the anti-ICE, right? It's like, it's okay for
Mhm.
people to be anti law enforcement, if you're protecting some marginalized group, right? And so we have a really unsafe situation for just anyone who's speaking out, because you don't know if the police will protect you.
We
But in
have a
general, the
two-tiered
police have been
justice
wonderful.
system.
I just, yeah,
We have a two-tiered
yeah,
justice system. Um,
yes,
y y
yeah,
when people say land of the free, there used to be these little signs that you could get at, like, the craft store that would say "Land of the free because of the brave," and
right.
so many people are afraid to be brave, and I wonder, because you've mentioned a few times church, are you a person of faith
I am.
yourself?
Then I have a wonderful church. Share the name of my church, because I don't
Oh,
want
I
the church
understand
to
it.
be canceled.
I'm the exact same.
So I'm really quiet.
I'm the exact same way. The reason that I asked that is because I feel like that is the last kind of bastion that makes people face their fears. Because and I do have a little bit of a waver in my voice, just because I've listened to so many people like the Gen Spect at the Gen Spect conference, and that real feeling that we could be taken out. I'm this little tiny channel. We've got, well, it's weird. It says that we have 2, but obviously I have more than that 'cause I'm getting more comments than that. But we have, even being this little tiny channel, you still have to be afraid. Like, I mean, I am. I am afraid, and I do it anyway, because I look at the option for the next generation. If they don't have people,
Right.
um, standing up, you know, I was again talking with my students the other day, and somebody said, I don't think that people turned their heads during the Holocaust because they agreed. I think they turned their heads because they were afraid. Regardless, it really doesn't matter. Um, to to
Mm-hmm.
to be so afraid that you don't do what needs to be done is still cowardice. That's how I look at it. And like I told you, I was there when Charlie was killed. Um, and watching so many people afterwards both gloat, and also watching my heroes across from Gen Spect, my friends from the Radical Center, which is Leslie's podcast, just watching different people, even like the big guys like Tim Pool, start to go, hey, this is scary. This is really scary. We're not supposed to be allowed to have a voice at all. And we're not supposed to be allowed to speak truth in America. And I watch these people who say, we've got about 15 years till we're lost. And I just sit there going, in what world? In what world do we have more than 6 months? Like, if if these people keep control. So, it's faith that keeps you going. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I'm probably, what's difficult if you say I'm doing this because of my faith, 100%. But, I think I would be doing this also, even without my Christian beliefs. I, as like Colin Wright, he's an atheist, right? He
James
studied
Lindsay, yeah.
evolutionary biology. Yeah. So,
Mhm,
so,
mhm.
if you, even if you, I mean, and I do believe in some ways creationism, and I have a strong faith, but
Sure.
even if I didn't have any faith at all, and I was just somebody who studied, how do we make humans, the sperm and the egg and the moment of conception, and then, you either have a male or female. Like, even if I just based it on my science background, my limited science background, I still know that, I had an amniocentesis when my daughter was inside, my womb. So I
Yeah.
knew her genetic makeup, whatever, that she was going to be female. And so that's why it was so hard for me to believe that she had learned in her science class that she wasn't going to grow up to be a woman, that she was actually a trans boy. Like that is crazy to me. And so my faith keeps me very strong in this, but I would say just my belief in that mammals are, male or female, and that, a chicken can't become a rooster, and a cow can't become a
Yeah.
bull, and a man can't become a woman. Like just reality, like biological reality keeps me wanting to fight this, right? This crazy belief that we never had. I never learned any of this in school. And so to have my kids, my daughter was the generation, that cohort that first got introduced to it in elementary
Yeah.
school. All the girls came out as trans in junior high school, and all these girls were offered top high school. So there's, 6 girls I know of right here in my town, breasts removed while they were still in high school. 2 of the
Oh,
girls
geez.
were in my daughter's friend group. So like I'm watching
Do they have
this, like,
regret today? Do they have regret today?
I don't,
You
I
don't
don't
know.
know these girls in particular. Yeah, but I do spend a lot of time with Layla Jane. She's only an hour away from me, and she
Okay.
was referred to the same gender clinic as my daughter, and did have her breasts scheduled at 12, removed at 13. And then by the time she was 15, she realized,
You don't
wait,
even
I'm
have
I'm
your full
I'm
breast
just
yet.
yeah, yeah, she's super bright.
Sad.
I think she might say
Yeah.
that she's on the autism spectrum, but like I brought her to one of the school board meetings in Elk Grove last month, the same place, and still people don't believe it. And she's like right there in the flesh,
Right.
till she lost her flesh, right? And they won't. We're not going to listen. We don't believe what you're saying. You're hateful bigots. It's like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
It's literally insane. Somebody just posted, Melocat just posted to me, it's mental abuse. It is 100% abuse. There's 2 points here.
It's
The first one is to, to depopulate, because many of these people will not
yes,
be
yes,
children. So that's the first point. And the second one is to
right.
have these people become activists, because so in one of our schools this week, I don't know if you saw my picture on Facebook, but so I don't know if it was Monday or if it was last week, but within the week, they had
Yeah.
a safe and welcoming, all-inclusive assembly. And they had these people who've already been exposed, and the group is called J-Line. And J-Line, when I say exposed, I mean there's pictures of him standing there with nothing but his, sack contained. And they're telling the kids things like, go check out our social media. Well, there it is. It's all right there. And everybody calls it safe and inclusive. Okay, but you can be gay. You can even today I was at the store, and my cash register person, my cashier was a trans person. Hardworking, harder working than anybody I've seen in the store in a long time, right? Um totally decent, totally normal. I mean, you know, person. And I just thought you can be this without being an activist. You can. Um, but that's not the goal, which is why there are people who will say, "Hey, if you're gay but you're not on the front lines, then you're not really queer." So, turning our kids queer is simply
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
rejecting anything ever that's normal. That's the goal here.
Yes, yes.
It-
Yeah.
And
It
so,
is. It's
if
queer
they can
theory.
mutilate kids,
It's not, yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, no, just like exactly what you're saying. This isn't about homosexuality and lesbian, gay, bisexual. This is about queer theory of like, yeah, breaking apart family units, bringing in anything that's not normal, right? Is part of
Right.
queer theory. And so, yeah. And then of
Right.
course being an activist, like you're saying.
And the thing
Yeah.
is yes, somebody just put queer is political. Absolutely, queer is political, but it's a
Right.
very specific kind of political in which nothing is ever allowed to be normal. So you start with the traditional family. Well, that's a big, huge problem. And so then you say, well, divorce families, and you normalize divorce. And so then once divorce is normalized, then you get to the next thing. Well, to be divorced is, that's fine, but that's still level of privilege. So let's go to same-sex attraction. Okay, well, now same-sex attraction is normalized and nobody has an issue with it. So now
Mhm.
what's the next? And you just constantly have to, and then you wonder why people let Epstein float by. And I'm not a person who that's not in my
Mhm.
wheelhouse, but nothing
Mhm.
can be normal. It all has to be about
Mhm.
destroying, 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 and then eventually you get to utopia.
Mhm.
But what has to happen in the between, that's the stuff that I'm not okay with. And
Yeah.
I'm not okay with for me because I will meet my maker and I want to be able to hear those words well done. But I do think that we have to be um generous or factual or whatever in terms of we need this big tent of people who are committed to common sense, who are committed to truth. Um yes, abolishing the gender binary. I'm just reading some of the notes here. The queer people I
Yeah.
know aren't gay. They're just bitter about yes, the prevailing social order here. Absolutely.
Right.
Bitterness is a part of it. Robbing these kids of joy,
Right.
making them miserable. One, you make them miserable, they need a lifelong therapist. A therapist
Mhm. Mhm.
today
Mhm.
is focused on social justice. There you have
Right.
exceptions to the rule, but mostly
Right.
they're focused on social justice. They're focused on keeping tearing families apart. Um,
Yep.
like you and I think arguably they're focused on creating militant young people. And I think that that is something we
Mhm.
cannot um it is foolish to say that that is a harmful idea when the numbers show what the numbers show. So many of these terrible shootings, you know? When Charlie was killed, he was killed
Well,
right after
to
somebody asked those questions. Go ahead. What are you gonna say, Beth? Sorry.
yeah. Oh, I was going to say part of to this queer theory, what's introduced in the schools is the idea that a trusted adult is somebody else besides your parents. And so they teach kids real young now that the trusted adult could be your teacher, your school counselor, your principal, could be your coach, could be a neighbor, could be, the parents of one of your friends. So trusted adults, these are safe zones. Your parents might be a trusted person, but a trusted person is anybody who wants to know your sexuality, your gender identity, and makes you feel comfortable. And they teach that, in elementary school. And right now in Davis and Woodland, which is 20 minutes away, we've had 2 teachers, both young women, charged with child rape. And in both cases, the victim was a 13-year-old boy. So why do we have teachers, young women, having, doing sex acts or raping 13-year-old boys?
I have 6 in my district
And
right
we
now.
can't even talk about it. We can't even talk about it. Like,
Yeah,
you're not allowed to say,
yeah,
why are we telling kids that the trusted adult is their teacher and not their parent?
right.
And why are we saying, they teach all this stuff about consent. So kids are
Yep,
taught that, you can consent to some kind of sexual act if you feel comfortable inside you and it makes you feel good.
yep.
So yeah, it's low the age of all of this, and it's making you think that your government is safe and not your family or your faith, right? It's like,
I have an episode
yeah.
on that where I talked to people who came here or I mean, they're in Wales and they're trying to expose Wales, little tiny Wales has comprehensive sex ed as young as preschool. And they are supposed to, one of the exercises they had them do is use a washable marker and circle on their body where it feels good to be touched. They also learn
Oh my.
sexual terms. They learn sexual terms like anus. Um, because if they can use those words with their little tiny voices, that means it's consensual. And they have all of the papers. I think it's Protect Child Health Wales, but I could be wrong about that term because I've just interviewed somebody else with Protect Child Health, so I could be mixing them up. But they want these kids exposed. I mean, it's Brave New World. The beginning of Brave New World has, a kid who gets in trouble for not wanting to play around sexually, and he's a child. So I'm just going to look at some of these. Somebody said color revolutionaries. I think that we could go one step further and call it rainbow revolutionaries. Um, that's 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 where we're at. They are teaching kids not to project their own personal boundaries. Absolutely, they're not supposed to have boundaries. That's the whole thing about teaching them to swallow lies.
Mm-hmm.
Anything is acceptable. Whatever you feel is acceptable. And if you don't feel it, then you might be a bad person. So adopt these other ideas. And then that's the thing about essay against prepubescent boys. Yes, it's taking advantage of the male sex drive. Absolutely. We have 6 in my school
Oh,
district.
that's good. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
excellent.
we have PE coaches, we have janitors, we have teachers. Um all 6 within the last year. Sexual assault as early as kindergarten. Again, my voice is getting it's very hard to talk about these things because I still can't get parents to advocate for their own kids. And it's very hard
They don't,
to watch that
I
and
don't think they want to
solve.
know just, yeah. It's so
Well, the
horrific.
thing
It
is
is
that they
so dark.
know.
It is, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it is,
yeah.
and it's hard to carry that, like, to show up with just you and one other person. I always tell people, if you're gonna go and speak to our school boards that are gonna look down on you, you gotta have more than one person, because one person will be like, "Oh, that's the crazy person they're looking for," right? You are the Joan of Arc. You gotta have a group with you. It is so sad. I'm sorry. It's hard. Um, okay, so you said that your daughter desisted. Do you now have a good relationship? Is she all the way around to the other side of it, or is she still an activist? Does she still have those ideas that some people would call glitter in the carpet? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Hmm. Oh, I do very much. I can't speak to where she's at right now. We've been estranged almost 3 years, and I'll start crying. But her younger brother, I see all the time. He's my son, and she talks to, family members. And so I know she's doing really well in school and did a half year abroad. And she's like the most amazing, loving kid in the world. So,
Good. I'm glad, and I think that that is, about the place where we can wrap. I will say that I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had in terms of my son's only gone to public school for the last 2 years. He went up until COVID, and then we had other options, so we took those options. I do feel, and he's into music and he's into theater. He is straight as far as I know, but but
yeah.
he is into those things, and I do think that if you aren't a parent who's really clued in to what's happening, it's like lambs to the slaughter for our kids. These clubs
Mhm.
are focusing on that.
Mhm.
The theme for my
Mhm.
son's choir is belonging. Like,
Mhm.
so those themes are there, and they sound so good, you guys. They sound so good when you hear words like
Mhm. They do.
inclusive and belonging. I'm about the most inclusive teacher you're going to find. I'm allowed to
Mhm.
give my kids hugs, and to see them for who they are, and to appreciate them, but it never comes down to things that I have no business knowing, ever. And
Mhm.
for the
Yeah.
teachers who may stumble across this, you know, I believe that most of you got into this for the right reasons, but is this is toxic. This is hurting and harming so many people. And then later on when these kids feel like I made a huge mistake, they have self-loathing. They also tend to loathe their parents who allowed it to happen, and I want to prevent you from being a part of that, you from thinking that you're an ally when you're putting them on this trajectory towards misery. And we're doing it in multiple ways.
Mhm.
Every single way that say studies, queer studies, ethnic studies, we're putting them on a trajectory
Mhm.
towards misery, towards heartache. So, Beth, thank you so much. I don't I'm not the world's best interviewer because I like to have a conversation as opposed to just ask
No, it was
questions. But
wonderful. It's
is there anything else that
so
you want to say?
wonderful.
Is there anything else that
I
you want
thought,
to put out
yeah.
there? How can people follow you, support you?
Oh, well, I am on Facebook. I actually think Facebook is pretty powerful. Like, I don't know if it's changed now with Meta, but I feel like now I'm able to share a lot, and people can follow me at Beth Young Borne, and I'm happy to be friends with anyone, anyone actually. And I put everything on public, and then I'm also on X as Born underscore Beth 2345, and I also love X. Well, all social media makes my head kind of spin, but I do love connecting with people around the world on X. And I always just ask people to support detransitioners. So support. There's a group called Icons who does a lot for women's sports, and they connect attorneys with men who are fighting for safe and fair sports, and then also defending education. It's also doing some really good work. And moms, all kinds of great groups to support. But yeah, I just really appreciate anybody who speaks out, even if it's at the grocery store or to your neighbor, to your child's school teacher, because I think
Yeah,
the one-on-one conversations too, we can just keep bringing awareness and asking questions. So
I always tell
yeah.
people be in love with truth, be so in love with it that you are repelled
Mhm.
by the idea of telling a lie. If you can get to that point,
Yes.
and there are moments when you just go,
Yes.
"Why? Why am I doing this? Does anybody hear? Does anybody care?" And then for me, it's a matter of like looking at my phone and looking at pictures of kids in my classroom who the lefties like to claim don't exist, but I'm not going to share their picture so that they can be a target.
Yeah.
Sorry. But let me just look at we've got a lot of love in the comments. Hugs, ladies. It's hard to watch the neglect. It does exasperate some children's PTSD from already. It absolutely does. Absolutely. One of the things for me that made me go, whoa, they're really targeting the group that I would have been in as a biracial former foster child with polycystic ovarian syndrome. All of that is stuff that they would have targeted and put me on the
Oh my
training bus,
God.
you know?
Yes. Yes.
And
It
and
is. Those 3 things and autism, right? But you hit 3 of the
yes,
big ones right there.
right, exactly.
Yep.
And the thing is that arguably some of these people believe that some people have less value than others. And if they can't procreate, then so be it. And I think that that's a real factor that makes me angry. And then just a lot of blessings and trying to apply sexual liberation across the board from a social constructivist ideology is going to lead to more abused boys and more monstrous men. Yeah. Yeah, because
Mhm.
these boys are, I mean,
Yep.
even if they're essayed by female teachers, they're gonna loathe who they are, and
Mhm.
that can very easily
Mhm.
whether they loathe by being more physically, and that happy place where the most rage is seems to be the trans, uh, I think it's called trans woman, anyways, the male identifying as a woman, and especially if they learn to hate women. I mean, a lot of them say they hate their mothers, and that's why, but I think they probably hate the teachers who sexually assault them, and the problem, I think, is that as our teachers, and then I promise to let you go over this, but as our teachers go to more and more trainings on queering the classroom, they begin to get more and more affirmed that doing things with students is acceptable because nothing is not acceptable. In fact, I'm going to cover that this evening. Just in that the Bolsheviks really felt that when they no longer believed in God, that they could do absolutely anything they wanted to because there was no one to hold them accountable. And I don't think that's a whole lot different than taking a whole bunch of teachers, putting them into rooms and telling them that truth is relative and that they're enlightened the more queer they are. So
Mhm.
Beth, thank you so much. I'm sorry I kept you over. I'll have some reels for you so you can put them up and
No.
share them on Facebook shortly. I really
Yes.
appreciate you talking
Really.
to me. Have a great one.
It's so nice to meet you. Okay, thank you.
You too.
Okay, bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye. Thank you everyone for watching.